There's a little-known part of Hollywood that most people are not aware of, known as the audience test preview. The book, Audienceology, reveals this for the first time. Our podcast series, Don't Kill the Messenger, brings this book to life, taking a peek behind the curtain. And now, join author and entertainment research expert, Kevin Goetz.
Behind the scenes, talent agents help weave the threads of the film industry. They don't just discover stars, but they're architects of careers. And the great ones possess a blend of intuition, tenacity, and conviction. Today, we dive into the lives of two legendary pros who have not only excelled as talent agents, but also who have left an indelible mark as producers, consultants, and leaders. I have with me today the dynamic Hollywood power couple, Paula Wagner and Rick Nicita. Rick is recognized for his strategic acumen and is the former co-chairman and managing partner of CAA. After her years at CAA, Paula worked as a studio executive reviving United Artists and is known for her long-standing collaboration with Tom Cruise, co-founding Wagner Productions, responsible for such hits as Mission Impossible, the entire Mission Impossible franchise, actually. She's recently added Broadway producer to her many titles. Paula, Rick, hey. I'm so glad
Kevin.
you're here.
Where do we go after that introduction?
Oh, my God.
Nice introduction, huh?
Very nice.
That was fabulous. How long we have known you.
I know. It has to be at least 3 decades.
Oh, yeah. Remember the first time at a screening, I went, who is that guy? How does he do that?
There's so much to talk about. And the danger, of course, is, and I'll reveal to our listeners, we're friends. And so when you're friends, you tend to know too much about each other. So I want to not take that for granted. I want to start with some of our commonalities. And I'm going to start with Paula because we have a great commonality. We were both actors. You started going to Carnegie Mellon. You shared with me something at lunch the other day, which was that you and Judith Light.
So, yes. My parents said, if you're going to be an actress, I started acting at 13. If you're going to be an actress, then if you're going to do it the best. Go to the best drama school in the country, which it was and still is.
Your parents said that?
Yeah.
Wow.
My mother drove me to the Youngstown Playhouse every night when I was in a play in Ohio. And one of the lead actresses, Elizabeth Hartman, had gone to Carnegie Mellon, or was Carnegie Institute of Technology then. I left after 2 years at Carnegie Mellon and went to the neighborhood playhouse, studied with Sanford Meisner himself, Bill Esper, all these great people, then went back and graduated from Carnegie Mellon. One summer, USO show, we were picked of all the shows in various colleges. We did Guys and Dolls. Judith Light and I were double cast as Adelaide.
A person could develop
She sings it to me on request lots. I go, do Adelaide.
Is that what wooed you into your relationship?
I was head over heels about it, but it wasn't that. I only learned about that later.
Now, where did you come from originally?
I grew up in Larchmont, New York, suburban New York.
Siblings?
One younger brother. I had no connection to show business. I was going to be a lawyer and finally got to law school, graduated from Wesleyan, went to Fordham Law in the fall of 1967 and realized that I hated law school and did not want to be a lawyer.
How many years were you there? Or
months, 4 or 5 months.
And that's smart that you
I just realized, and I try to tell young people that you have to realize, give everything a shot if you have a desire to do something.
And I think you passed it on to your boys.
Hopefully. But what I did was I thought to myself, okay, you've dropped out of law school. What is it you want to do? What do you want to be? And I decided I didn't necessarily want to do what was easiest, what was closest, what my parents wanted me to do, God love them, or what society did. I want to be in the movie business.
Why?
Because I always loved movies. I went to movies. If no one would go with me, I'd go by myself. I remember walking through the snow to the Larchmont
I was just going to ask you what your theater was.
Larchmont Theater.
Was it a Loews? No, that's what we said in Brooklyn.
The Loews?
The Loews. We never called it the Lowe's. It was the Loews.
I remember just growing up watching movies like Giant and The Ten Commandments.
So you just stole the question out of my mouth, which is, give me a movie that really had an influence on you.
But the movie that had an influence on me was King Kong. Why? Because
I mean, with Fay Ray?
Absolutely. Because in New York in those days, there were 7 channels, 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. And they didn't have much programming, so they had something called $1 Million Movie.
Oh, I remember it.
$1 Million Movie, which would play the same movie 2 or 3 times a day, the same movie. Each week, they'd pick a movie. So if you were just sitting home, you'd see a movie 15 times, 20 times. And I would watch King Kong 20 times. So I know every line of it. And I went, I want to do what they're doing.
Wow.
I want to be part of that.
And when you look at those effects, it's so comical.
Fabulous.
They're
fabulous. They're
fabulous.
Don't even, she knows that I keep saying, can we watch King Kong? Can we watch?
All the time.
I called a friend who was at the William Morris Agency, whatever that was. And I said, I want to be in the movie business. He goes, but you're in law school. I go, no. I dropped out, and he said, the only thing you can do is be in the mailroom for $40 a week full time. This is in 68. And I said, I'll do it. I came, had an interview. So basically, I walked into the agency business in 1968 and walked out of the agency business 40 years later in 2008.
Wow.
I enjoyed it.
Now, Paula, so how does Paula Wagner go from Carnegie Mellon Neighborhood Playhouse, did their production in Germany, you come back to New York, and you get a part in a Broadway show?
I actually came out to L.A., which was a mistake, actually.
Oh, before you went back to New York?
In the early 70s, late 60s. I did a couple of parts in movies then, little parts in films, got an agent, did the whole thing. I did a lot of other jobs. I ran a modeling school, John Robert Powers.
The Powers models?
Powers, I was the makeover
But
person.
that was my cousin was a Powers model. She's 101 and a half right
Oh,
now.
God.
My father's first cousin. And she is stunning. Still has that same kind of
They
carry
were,
yourself.
but this was the charm school.
Oh, my God.
But listen, it was a good gig. I got $5 an hour to do that.
Good gig.
It was pretty good. So went back to New York and then ended up in Lenny, the Lenny Bruce story. And I was a replacement. At that point, my name was Paula Kaufman from Ohio.
With 2 sisters, by the way.
With 2 sisters, yeah. But I have to tell you, so I'm an actress on Broadway, and everybody wanted that agent who's going to really make your career go. You're going to be a movie star and do all of this. There was a young agent at William Morris, and I knew a bunch of his clients.
Who was he?
His name was Rick Nicita.
Rick Nicita. And how do you spell
Nicita?
Oh, Lord.
That was, and he was the one, you got to have Rick Nicita. He was this young hotshot agent. And I acted with some of his clients. I knew who he was. He was the guy that you wanted. But I had another agent. He didn't sign me.
I married her, but I didn't.
But I didn't sign her.
No.
But anyway, that was
Much better
Why don't you tell
better part of the deal.
So when you audition for a Broadway show, then you'd go back, you got your script, reading it, you go backstage, you wait, all the actresses show up at 2:00. So there's 10 of us sitting around.
The worst, though. You know
It's
exactly
just,
your competition.
And I'm sitting in this chair and it's winter and I kind of, have my one leg over the side of the chair and I'm reading the script and I look around and here's this guy, black, full hair, big black beard, and he has a sheepskin coat. This is 1972, 73, maybe, something like that. Hands in the pocket, a little bit of swagger. And I go, oh my God, that is Rick Nicita. And I'm sitting there and I kind of turn around to smile like, hey, Rick. And I kind of go, hello. And he goes, hey, does one of those kind of points at you.
Yeah.
Hey, Diane, how you doing?
She insists this is true, but I don't remember.
Okay, whatever.
It is true. If she says it's true,
Yeah.
it's true. You know why? If your kid says, Dad, you were not at my hocky game.
Yeah,
and then you say, yes, I was. You were not at that hockey game because the kids remember. So she's telling you the truth. Go ahead.
So that was that. But anyway, that was just a kind of moment that sticks out.
So we knew each other.
But
I mean, we casually knew each other, and then after you can tell them about when you became an agent. And then
Well,
we
that's where
wooed
I was
you.
going. But I
Yeah.
have to say one thing. I saw a picture the other day of Paula. Now, Paula's
Yeah.
beautiful today. You really are. And you've always been. I always
Thank
thought you were strikingly beautiful. I saw a picture that was arresting. I mean, you were so damn hot. I mean, beautiful, like just beautiful bone structure. The
Lush
whole
and
thing.
lovely.
Let me ask you this. So how does a woman who is starting in the theater, trained, move to agenting? What happens?
A lot happens. I was doing Midsummer Night's Dream at the Yale Repertory Theater. I was a member of the Yale Rep.
Did you
and
go to Yale?
No, but I was a member of the Yale Rep as a professional
Yeah,
actress.
they brought in equity actors from New York.
Yeah.
That was very prestigious then, almost like Lincoln Center.
Exactly.
Right? Had
Yes.
John Houseman's company.
Who was it? Robert Brustein, Alvin
Wow.
Epstein.
Who were
You
some of
know.
the other actors then? Do you remember?
Victor Garber was in it with
Talented.
me. Meryl Streep had just done the
Not
part.
talented. Keep going.
She was the star of Yale.
Oh, my God.
But she wasn't there. She had gone to the public theater. And basically, when she left, I played the role that she had originated, Helena in Midsummer Night's Dream. And then I did Don Juan, Moliere's Don Juan, whatever. But I went from being a Shakespearean actress at the Yale Repertory Theater to an agent in Hollywood. My agent offered me a job as an agent.
Who was your
and I
agent?
took
Susan
it.
Smith?
Susan Smith. There, that's it in a nutshell.
Why would she offer you a job?
Well, that's a whole other story, but I would go through all the contracts. I had taken an LSAT class and took the LSAT. I was thinking of going to it's a long,
She knew how sharp you were. and
Did
how-
you feel a
And-
sense like I did when I gave it up for producing and then ultimately marketing? Did you feel a loss, like you were giving
I
something
didn't
up?
give it up. I'm still an actress.
just hasn't worked in a while.
My God, you and I swear, I think we're twins. No, I mean, like, Paula, I swear I always say that, and it's true. Once you are, and it has served you so well.
I I just found something that I thought was so cool and I loved.
But
and,
you love
and Rick
actors.
Nicita,
You love other actors. You do.
I love actors. It's all about actors. My whole career was about having been one.
Who was your first big
But-
sign when you started?
When I was recruited to a new company called CAA.
Yes.
Well, I represented Jane Curtin and a number of TV directors, but the first young actor I co-signed was Sean Penn, and then the first actor I signed was an unknown kid named Tom Cruise.
In what year? That would have
Wait a
been
minute, I
82?
think
81.
I've
81.
heard of his name. Tom and I grew up, we're a week apart in age. We grew up only a few towns apart in New Jersey.
Huh.
And of course, he was doing Guys and Dolls in the school play and was brought into New York to my girlfriend, one of my best girlfriends, Lorraine Gawley at the time. She's now Lorraine Rufo. She brought Tom in to meet her manager because she was a pro in high school. And Toby Gibson was her name. And Toby signed him, got his first role, and then Toby's nephew stole Tom from his own aunt. And then he got, I guess, a second movie maybe before Paula came in swooped in and got what became one of the most successful partnerships in Hollywood history. We're going to get back to that, but I want to get back to Rick for a second.
But by the way, I did want to say one of the reasons when CAA, Fred Spector called me up, recruited me to this kind of when it was hot, up-and-coming agency called CAA, I knew Rick Nicita had an incredible reputation as a major, classy, intelligent.
So he was one of the main reasons that you...
Absolutely. As a professional, I had great respect for him. He represented the best actors. He understood the theater and the theater actors and how to bring them on into films. So that was one of the reasons that motivated me.
Yeah, but when you say how Susan knew, because Paula was obviously a potential agent star, and she came out of the gate really, really fast. You became one of the most prominent agents at CAA and seemed in about 20 minutes.
Rick, I cannot believe the roster of people that you've either signed and or worked with. Who, can I just do a little fun thing with you? which is a little speed round here. If I name a name, just give me a word to describe a few of these people. I'll throw the names out. I'm going to just toss a couple out here. So when I say a person, just sort of give me what pops into your head. Al Pacino.
Intense.
Francis Ford Coppola.
Spiritual.
Wow. Sally Field.
Determined.
Bette Midler.
Funny.
Rob Reiner.
Political.
And yeah, he worked very closely with Norman Lear, didn't he, in
Oh, yeah.
American Way
Yeah.
and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love that about him, by the way. Nicole Kidman.
Actress. Capital A.
Kurt Russell.
Spontaneous.
Kevin Costner.
Resolute.
Wow. Well, we can go on and on, folks. Rick, did you have a protege that was an agent that you saw great potential in?
Well, I don't know that I'd single anybody out. I like to think that I tried to be helpful to all of them and bring kind of a different style to agenting.
Well, not to blow smoke up your ass, but your wife has used the word class. And I always remember the young Pisher growing up with Joe Farrell and Catherine Porra at NRG, you know, always sort of a classy guy, always so kind. I don't think I've heard a bad thing about you. I'm sure
that's nice to hear.
Have their opinions about the deal that
I would hope
the way they wanted.
I would expect so. I would almost hope so.
But in fact, you have just been, to me, the epitome of don't confuse nice with softness.
Yeah, look, what I tried to do was, first off, make every negotiation collegial. Try to get everybody to put their fists down, realize that if we can make a deal, then everyone's going to benefit. And if we don't make the deal, no one benefits.
Well, that's great advice. By the way, Paula said to me at lunch the other day, which I thought was great, was some version of you have to know when you're going to say no.
Yeah.
And if you know when you're going to say no, you better mean it. And Paul, I said to you, how many deals, when you made the decision to say no, we're going to walk, did you lose? And your answer was?
None.
Incredible. Yeah. Remember, you got to know, listeners, that you are wanting or needing or have to walk away. If you're playing, you know, it's going to weaken the position.
No, you can't. When you say, no, we don't accept that, you mean it, and your client, and I would never do that without checking with my client.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would never just throw that
But
out.
look, there are three things I think an agent does. I think negotiating the deal is the least of the three. Least important, because lawyers can do it. It becomes a ritualistic thing. It's not rocket science. Second most important thing is getting the right role offered to them. You just don't sit there and wait on the phone. You go out and you get it.
Let's stop for a second and say this. Taste, taste, and taste, which is you both have it. And I know it only because I've worked with you after in different iterations, and your sense of material, your sense of what makes story work, your appreciation of research, quite frankly, and the respect for the audience has always been very impressive to me in what I do.
Appreciate it.
Well, it's absolutely true. What makes a great agent? Like, what's the chemistry, the alchemy of the best of the best?
Well, I think they have to understand the needs of the client without necessarily needing the client to tell them what they need. They have to know what's best for the client, even if the client doesn't even realize it. I was in charge of their careers. I wasn't in charge of their bank book. That's their business manager. I was not their financial advisor. And in this business, what you don't do is you don't follow the money. If you're successful and make the right choices, money will find you.
So if you have the actor, let's say, are in their movie star years, we'll call them.
Yep.
And, you know, we who are producing almost don't want to go to certain actors because you realize they're never going to do that. Nor would I if I were. I mean, that's a smart, more evolved way of thinking. Why would I go and waste my time thinking that they're going to take this small role in this? At the same time, there are times when the actor, you know, needs a break.
Absolutely. That's the agent.
To direct.
That's the difference
That's usually
in
a
agents.
manager, though, isn't it? That does that. But the great agents.
Now you've
And
touched on a whole other thing.
In our day, as agents, if you needed, I always thought, if you need a manager, then I'm not doing my job.
Oh, I love this so much.
Oh, yeah.
But I will say we came at it very differently, Rick and I, but we ended up in the same place. And he really, I have to say, a mentor, because his style was so appropriate and so infectious. But for me, I came at it from a different place. I became the agent I always wanted to have. And I saw myself as an advocate. And so very similar in a way, but I just saw it from a different perspective. I walked in those shoes. I auditioned. I was a lousy auditioner.
I tell every young actor, get in a casting session. See how much, you don't have control over what's happening.
Exactly.
I mean, it may be as simple as we already cast, I don't know, take Sissy Spacek in the role, and she's a redhead or blonde, and you would never be her child. So therefore, you're not getting that role. I mean, yet you did the best audition. So actors need to understand how those conversations go. I also think they need to step into the room to see how, in fact, they can take the room and own the room. And that could be in a bunch of ways. It doesn't have to be arrogance. It doesn't, but it is, there's something about showing who you are and showing who you are where I want to work with you. I need your energy in my picture or whatever it is.
Well, I would actually, not only that, but I'd flip it. Clients would call me after an audition and they'd say, well, I think they like me. I'd say, I don't want to hear that. I'd say, I'll find that out from them. I don't need you to tell me. They'll tell me. What did you think of them? Do you want to work with them? Did they impress you? Did that director,
Wonderfully empowering.
Did you like what the director said to you? Was that casting director open and solicitous? I'm always trying to de-escalate, just make it calmer. So what do you think? Also, talk about money. What I told my clients was, you will never be paid properly in this business, ever. You will be overpaid or underpaid. It's going to be too much or too little. You're never going to be paid what you want. They say, how dare they offer me so little? Cut to, wow, are you kidding? With no real in-between. I've never had a client say, oh, that's about right. Yeah, that's sure. No, it's too much or it's wow or it's too little.
When we come back, we are going to continue our conversation and talk more about leaving the agency business and getting into second acts. We'll be back in a moment.
Get a glimpse into a secret part of Hollywood that few are aware of and that filmmakers rarely talk about. In the book Audienceology by Kevin Goetz. Each chapter is filled with never-before-revealed inside stories and interviews from famous studio chiefs, directors, producers, and movie stars, bringing the art and science of audienceology into focus. Audienceology, how moviegoers shape the films we love. From Tiller Press at Simon & Schuster. Available now.
We're back with the wonderful power couple, Paula Wagner and Rick Nicita. By the way, before we get into leaving the agency business, Paula mentioned just a few minutes ago about if I'm not doing the job of a manager, meaning if you need a manager, I'm not doing my job. And I thought that was really profound and very helpful advice.
As an agent. Yeah.
As an agent, yeah. Rick, do you agree with that?
Well, I would
echo that.
I would agree with that in 1980 to 90 to 2000 or so, because there's been a sea change in the whole agency function and structure. Things changed, things evolved. And when we started, when Paul and I started as agents, it was under the heading of managers. It was, you have a manager? Really? Cut to, who's your manager? Not even do you have a manager now. It's, oh, nice to meet you.
When you were an agent, did you not want to work with managers?
I couldn't figure out what they did.
Well, I had a manager my whole life. I had Barbara Jarrett to start.
Yeah.
Barbara Jarrett was the one that started Brooke Shields and Elizabeth Shue and Lori Loughlin. And she was a young person's manager. And in New York, you freelanced with agents. So every job I went out for, if I went for a commercial for Toyota, FBI is your agent. This one, Phoebe Oscar is your agent. William Morris is your agent. Gilchrist Agency. You remember Life Cereal? He likes it. The mother started in Mikey. He likes it. They started an agency. So I had maybe 20 different agents that would be assigned, and I worked as doing commercials, so that was nice for them.
Look, I owed my agenting career to a manager in New York named Bill Tresh.
Tresh?
Bill Tresh.
Who was
the
great. Yeah.
king of the young New York talent in the late 70s, and he placed clients with me. He made my career. As simple as that. The question here isn't so much what managers do as what agents don't do.
Well, I trained with Susan Smith, and Susan actually left being an agent at a certain point, became an amazing manager. So her vision of what it meant to be an agent was probably more managerial. As an agent, you were doing
more
everything.
transactional.
More
agents. It's a license. It's a real estate agent, any kind of agent.
But it still was nurturing, developing
personal
growing
attention.
careers.
And when did that
Personal
change? Was
attention.
that under the Mike Ovitz area?
No,
time?
I don't
Iyer,
quite know when it did. I wouldn't put it under them. I think it's when there was a consolidation and agencies became bigger. There used to be what we'd call the mom and pop shops, Chase and Park Center, and the boutiques. And they were small enough so that the agents were able to pay personal attention to the clients. In other words, it was a very
and packaging
tight
and all that came to be, right?
Well, but I don't know if that has that much to do with it. I think it's numerical. I almost think it's numerical. A small agency with a small client list, personal attention. A huge agency with an even huger, they've X employees and 10X clients and keep them coming. There's no time and space for personal attention. So the agents step back.
Very interesting.
Agents step back.
Yes.
Nature abhors a vacuum.
Yes.
Income managers. So right now, a manager, I believe, is needed and necessary because of the change of function where agents are much more transactional, your word just now, than they used to be. It's the deal and employment. Their employment.
So you think managers now are far more necessary?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I agree.
Absolutely.
And when the agencies became so vertically integrated, which is what has happened to the agencies, managers are necessary. When the agency business in the 80s, it was actors, directors, writers, some producers, some television, film. That was it.
Paula, why did you leave agenting?
I loved it, actually, and I was on top of my game, but somehow I found that what I was doing naturally was putting the films together, functioning like a principal in some ways. I couldn't help myself, but in fact, an agent is a representative. You are not the principal. And somehow I thought, I want to put films together. I want to be involved.
Creativity.
The creativity. It was the right brain saying, although I have such incredible regard for the creativity and the brilliance and
of the good ones, of the great ones.
Agents, of the great agents.
Please say what happened with Rain Man.
Oh, you were there because we were going up to Big Sur for Thanksgiving, and we'd always take a stack of scripts. That was the great thing about working together at this point, because we would read our 9 scripts for the weekend, or
and let's go away in a beautiful place to
do it. And we're together doing this, which was great. There was a film Mike Ovitz brought up in the meeting that he was working on with Dustin Hoffman called Rain Man, and he said, but we're trying to find his older brother. They had been talking to Bill Murray at some point. And it just sounded like a really interesting film. I think there was a director involved at that point, but so
it wasn't Barry?
No. This was an evolution of this project, of how it got made. So I read the script and I got tears. It was just so beautiful, the script. I think I said, oh, you've got to read this. I gave it to Rick to read. It was so amazing. But it didn't make sense with Dustin's older brother, because he would have known about Dustin if you know the story.
Absolutely.
So what made more sense is a younger brother. And who better than my young client, Tom Cruise? So I brought it up in the meeting.
She says to me, Tom should play the role. I go, honey, it's older brother. And she goes, no. Should be the younger brother, and it should be Tom.
And I brought it up in the meeting, and I will say I got a few laughs, except Mike said, interesting idea. And then that started the whole thing. But I did get it.
Oh,
People were like,
Paula,
Paula, you always are coming up with all these
Oh, no.
off the
Born
wall
on the
ideas.
4th.
Born on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
Same
Born
thing?
on the-
Same kind of thing?
Yeah, born on the 4th of July. Well, I represented Oliver Stone, and I said, do you have anything, any script lying around someplace? And he said, yeah, this film that never got off the ground. I had your client, Al Pacino.
Yeah, I was supposed to do it. Not when I was.
Not when you were, but,
No.
and this whole, and I said, oh, I'd love to read it because it's in the middle of the 80s, and the 80s are this go, move fast. And it was so incongruous, you know, a Vietnam War film, a true story. But I read it and I said, this is the greatest role I've ever read. I love it when you have a full-page monologue for an actor. Because as an actor, I would look at that and I'm like, oh,
100%.
yes, my God, you can just go to town. And it was a great role and put Tom and Oliver together. And everybody, and he was so brilliant. But a lot of people were like, what? Why would you have him play this guy?
You were under pressure not
That'll
But see, Rick,
ruin
that's
his career.
That's the genius of the great agent who's now thinking about a bigger picture, not just her client, but what would be best to service the material. And then she happened to have the biggest movie star in the world.
Each decision is supposed to not make you rich. Worry about that later. It's supposed to expand opportunities so that if you do this, you'll have more opportunities. And if you do the next one, you have even more opportunities. The number one thing an agent does is decide, I won't say the name, but this sums up what I think what an agent has to do in being an agent. Very famous actor. There's an offer for him to do a certain movie. And I wanted him to do it, but he couldn't make up his mind. It was the right role for him, a great financial offer, which even he acknowledged was a great money offer. Finally, I said to him, literally on the phone, I said, what I'm doing, I'm hanging up on you and I'm calling them and accepting the role. Bang, I do it. I hang up, call, accept the role, call him back. I say, I did it. You're doing it. He goes, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Be honest with me here, both of you. Do you bring every single offer to your client?
I was a little less so. I tried to work it so I had permission to turn down stuff that doesn't.
That you knew was
the
so
rock
far
bottom,
afield.
no. The middle, I'd go. The middling thing. By the way, I'm only talking about material. I'm not talking about money. In other words, in my judgment here, the bottom ones I would just shoo away. The middling ones, I'd tell them, I'd say, don't bother reading it. Don't trust me. No go. And anything that was competitive
To consider.
Yeah, I always had a point of view. Do this, don't do that. Seriously.
Well, that's what I would
consider this,
want if I
don't.
were in that position. I would want someone
That's what
vetting
I'm-
who I respected and then trusted, you know?
Exactly. But actually, if it were a firm financial offer, yes. But take an offer, I would
Well,
take
that's your
all the
fiduciary
offers.
responsibility
Absolutely.
as an agent. Now, when you and Tom started the company, you started Cruise Wagner. By the way, why is it not called Wagner Cruise? I have a feeling Tom probably said, no, it should be called Wagner Cruise. And you said, nope, Cruise Wagner.
No.
It sounds better.
No, it does sound better. But look, Tom.
You were always deferential to your talent because that's who you are.
Yes, but
In
with
a
a
good- in a
strong point
beautiful
of
way.
view. Always, a perspective.
Listen, I watched you. I
Careers.
saw you, and you were a marvelous producer,
When you-
are a marvelous producer. We'll talk about Broadway when we sort of end this discussion, but going back to those years, you had tremendously successful years, which actually got you to taking over a studio that was essentially a studio that was dead, and you revived it called United Artists. And there was such life that, and we were all buzzing in the industry that, you got to be a mogul immediately. What was that like?
Scary as hell. Really scary. Look, it was a idealistic, romantic conceit. The idea,
Tell us.
the concept, to me, the concept of artists having some real control over their own destiny.
Some agency, not to use the pun.
Some
but
agency, but having control over their destiny in the films that were done and the evolution and the history. It was a romantic kind of thought to be able to do this. But the reality is what United Artists had become, which was really a label, a title, it was the wrong time and the wrong place. You know, we were in the midst of strikes.
Oh, I remember.
Writers' strike, a de facto actor strike.
And that's where you and I really got to know each other better.
Yes.
In that period
in that time. And in 2007, it was called the financial crisis.
Yeah.
That
was the word I was going to say. The financing of UA was the money wasn't quite just sitting there. We had a long road to get to it.
It was essentially a startup company that had to be started up and launched within a couple of months.
What made you and Tom work so well for so many years?
Respect. Tom was a born producer. When I was his agent and he was a client, he had a first look deal someplace. But I noticed as an actor, he always saw the big picture.
He's
It wasn't
so
just
good.
about his role, you know.
Oh, well, let me just say this. There's a lot of people that love Tom Cruise, okay? I'm crazy about him. We talked about Andrea Jaffe on his team, may she rest in peace, who was his longtime publicist before Pat Kingsley came in. And then I saw you and how you both worked with each other. And I was just sort of dazzled by it. And it just worked. So mutual respect.
Mutual respect. And look, we loved each other. To this day, I adore him.
I love that you still have
He's-
such a good relationship. And
Absolutely.
every time I'll see him and bring your name up, it's like, you know, it's just a joy. It's just joy.
He was just so wonderful. Just from the first meeting when he borrowed Sean Penn's sports jacket or something. He was close friends with Sean. They had just done Taps. Look, when I left, Rick, shortly thereafter, I think Mike and Ron, but Rick represented Tom when we were in the Cruise Wagner making Mission Impossible.
You took
and all
over
that.
the
Yeah, it was funny. But we were sometimes on kind of opposite sides of things. Sometimes we'd be on exactly same side versus the studio, but other times we'd be.
We negotiated against each other.
Yeah, it was.
By the way, for a role in one of the Mission Impossibles.
I'm going to ask Rick a question about pillow talk. Is there? Do you bring it into
absolutely?
You bring it into.
Oh yeah.
Well, Neil and I have a rule: we don't bring business into the bed.
Oh, we do, because first off, we enjoy it. I enjoyed this business, I always have, and so does Paula. We'll go to a restaurant. We'll see a couple of some years, say, who have been, obviously they're a couple, and they're not saying much to each other. And Paula and I talk endlessly. Is it about the business? Sure.
I'm going to say
the
something.
Sure,
This is a true love story. I really mean that. I watch you. I see how you behave with each other. You're there to support each other, help each other, and be deferential to each other. It's so beautiful to watch. And I hope Zach and Jesse are cognizant and appreciative of that.
We believe
They are.
Yeah.
They are.
By the way, we will be married 40 years in October.
Mazel tov.
How about that?
Wow.
Isn't that hard to believe?
Should we tell the 40 years? But on one of your substantial birthdays, I wanted to do something kind of just out there. And he was at CAA.
I don't know if you remember, but there was a thing, the strippogram. Do you
remember those?
Of course.
So my birthday, and my assistant comes in and says, Rick, you have a strippogram. And I go, oh, God. Person comes in. Big,
she ruined it?
Yeah. Well, you couldn't miss it because the door opens. It was right there.
Okay.
No, it was right there. And so the stripper is, taking this off, and the stripper's playing, and I'm sitting there watching. I go, geez, looks like Paula. And I thought, and then I went, it is Paula. She actually did it and came up and did that. And it took me a while to do it, but it was
genius.
But the extra punchline is that Paula walked through. We had valet parking, right? And she down in the basement where you would park all the time,
And I had I had a wig, and I had an actual stripogram guy that had a little tuxedo that announced it. I paid for the, like I was doing the real thing.
But as she's walking through the valet, they look up and go, oh, hi, Paula.
Right. And I walk past another agent's desk, and I hear one of the assistants go, oh, my God, I think we've had 2 of those today.
I got my share of strippogram.
But you can't do that now.
You can't do that.
That was in the,
Speaking of which,
80s.
all right, this is
that
a-
was
this
in
is-
the late
this is-
80s
Look,
or the 90s.
I'm not sure we'd be married if today's political correctness.
PC-ness.
Yeah.
100%. No, 100%.
Why? Because, look, I was doing my best to woo her. I mean, I just felt
Absolutely.
badly in
Well,
love
you know,
with her
there's
and
all
thought I
sorts.
thought
Now
I-
you'd have to report it to HR.
Oh,
Yes.
man.
About to get into a relationship.
Oh.
No, you have to. I want to ask you something about the business in general. Where is it going? What are we going to do? I'm going to be honest. I find it exciting.
Yeah.
I find great opportunity. And I'd like to know what you both think of it. Paula?
I think movies aren't going away, and there'll be a renaissance for film. I just don't think that movies are at the center of our culture the way they used to be. It used to be that movies defined culture or reflected culture, and they were at the center. The talk around the water cooler in an office, those moments where I saw the greatest movie last night, go see it, and it became, they are here to stay. But it's morphing, and it's all technology driven.
I think that
Everything.
we're all going to be fine because human beings want stories told with visual representations if possible. Therefore, there will be a consistent appetite. The technology and the culture will stagger along trying to figure out how to get these stories with visual representations to the audience. But the audience is there. We'll figure it out. It's never going to go away. And the talent is what will always stay. There will always be a knock on the door of the talent. The question is, who's outside
Okay,
the
hold
door?
on. Let's talk about that. Let's unpack that a little bit. No movie stars anymore.
There are movie stars, but they can't.
They're different, though,
They're
aren't they?
not. I mean, look,
Who's Tom Cruise? Come
Tom
on.
Cruise is
No, but who's
amazing.
I'll tell you who Tom Cruise
You
is.
know.
Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. He's still one of the biggest stars in the world
But
at
he became
62.
a star at like 21. You know, when he
understand that.
slid across.
But what
the
are we
floor.
doing as an industry?
What we're doing
that has
is
stopped that.
social media, that you can see anything about anybody. There's something
There's
about
no secrets.
the
No
mystery
secrets.
of it
No
being
mystery.
a movie star.
No mystery. People magazine, when they say movie stars, they're just like us. I went, oh, no, they're not, babe. They were showing them coming out of Starbucks, you know, looking glassy-eyed. No go.
Yeah.
And I think that it's the social media, and the media is complicit with that too, but we get what we deserve. I've always thought that if you went back to the 1940s and you got Cary Grant walking down the red carpet and he fell, I swear the photographers would turn away and go, "You okay, Mr. Grant?" You go, "I'm all right, boys."
Exactly.
And he'd stand up and they go, "Okay." And then they go back. Now they'd be jumping on him, going up to his eyeballs, hoping he's hurt.
What's going to change?
I think, and maybe I'm just naive, I think there will be a kinder culture. I think just right now,
Oh, boy.
we're in
God,
a
I hope
terrible...
you're right.
But it's a culture that's filled with fear, because when I started as an agent in the 80s, what excited me was the idea of being able to help build their... I loved the idea of movie stardom. While he was watching King Kong, I, of course, was watching I'll Cry Tomorrow. I was watching all these women. The movie stars just enthralled me, the idea. And in the 80s, the studios were making all these youth films, John Hughes and all of this, and they were casting young, unknown actors. Tom, risky business. Nobody really knew who he was. Or another of my clients, Matthew Broderick in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, or Sean Penn in Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
They have
Do you know?
decades-long careers.
Yes.
Now, I also think that, didn't they teach us at the Neighborhood Playhouse that television at that time, soap operas in particular, deadened the actor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you needed to stretch your muscle through the theater, and you needed to do movies, a lot of them. You think of Bette Davis, she was always working the muscle. And I don't think we allow our talent to do that, good, bad, or otherwise. Like, they're not playing in the sandbox.
I think part of it, and this is not going to win me a lot of friends, I think part of it is the talent's fault, that they're selling out and not pursuing what it is that they really should be.
Who do you think has the most promising career today as a young person? I mean, we can go Ryan Gosling, of course, but he's not that young anymore. I'm talking like the up-and-comers. Ryan has done a body of work already. You see what I mean? Look how we have to struggle. I'm going to say this. If I asked you this 20 years ago, we would be Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, Eddie Murphy, Denzel Washington, Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks. It would be the list of them. And the women, Julia Roberts, Meg Ryan, Sandra Bullock. It would be easy to, we can't think of people now. That is troubling to me.
But they don't, because there's a fear to introduce the unknown. We're so brand oriented in everything we do as a culture.
And the young people, I asked a young actor last week, what's going on or whatever. And he said, oh, well, I just hired my branding manager, branding something.
But again, it's vertically integrating. So if you have
Timothy Chalamet, probably.
I was just going to say him. I was going to say Austin Butler.
And certainly Zendaya.
Yes, absolutely.
But again, guys, look how we had to struggle to get those names. And I just think, to what you're saying, Paula, we have to have more of a reverence for the artists and a place for them to work.
Also, I was going to say, speaking about Andrea Jaffe and I, who's Tom's publicist, worked really closely together so that it was about getting the right roles, doing the right roles, having a philosophy of a
Would you
career.
call Andrea before accepting a role and say, here's what we're thinking?
No, not really. We would talk conceptually, but no. But right away after to say, how do you want to position this? What are we going to do with it? Looking at the film. I mean, there was care and more simplicity in managing and directing and guiding the careers. That's what Rick and I are both saying this. We both did this. What excited me about being an agent was guiding and developing and building careers.
That was Rick said in the beginning of this podcast. The easy thing is closing the deal.
Yes.
But the more challenging, difficult, and probably more fun thing by far is to build a career. Watching those successes, watching that growth.
And when you represent stars, which Paula and I were both fortunate enough to do, you get a lot of offers. So what do? Which one it's up to the agent to figure out, not that one, not that one, that one. This is the
Is there a time where a star has overruled you and you knew innately that they were wrong?
For sure. I always said that I could talk any client out of doing anything, but it was sometimes hard to talk them into doing something.
Did you ever talk someone into do something? They didn't want to do it, and it turned out to be really successful. I think Sissy Spacek in Coal Miner's Daughter is one example.
So I did Matthew Broderick and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Arnold Stiefel was his manager, so the two of us, and that was, when you had a manager, you worked very closely with him. Talked and talked and talked, and Matthew acknowledges that. He's wonderful. He's a brilliant actor. He was a stage actor, a serious actor, and here this Ferris Bueller's Day Off comes along, this John Hughes teen movie, but he did it. And
it defined him.
But he didn't want to do it. And I had a number of those cases.
We could talk forever. I want to end with something, though, Paula. I want to end with Broadway, where we started, and ask you about what you're doing now. I had the wonderful opportunity to work and conduct research on one of your latest, Pretty Woman, that went to Broadway. We tested it out of town in Chicago. You made some changes based on audience feedback. Brilliant. I so respect you for that. What's up next? What are you thinking about?
Well, the theater was where I began. And
by the way, we didn't mention your first marriage.
His name was Robin Wagner, and he was the preeminent stage designer. He designed Hair, Lenny, Jesus Christ Superstar, Chorus Line, the producers.
He did the Mirrors and Chorus Line.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
He just recently passed away.
And with whom you maintained a relationship.
Maybe very friendly. Yes,
and your
Rick
ex-wife
also.
Your first wife was Wagner Nicita. I think she started in casting.
Very successful.
Very successful. And then moved to producing with Lauren Lloyd and among other. Yeah.
Exactly.
So you see how far we all go back?
Oh, baby.
Paula, anything left that you can share in terms of Broadway shows that you're working on? Or do you prefer
Broadway,
to keep it?
No. Everything is a little close to the vest. But Broadway always from the beginning. And 10 years ago, I went back and produced my first Broadway show, which was The Heiress, starring Jessica Chastain.
It's a wonderful...
And Dan Stevens came over and did it. It was a whole thing.
David Strathairn?
David Strathairn, yeah. So I've done a number of
I
shows.
saw Cherry Jones do it, by the way, who was also just brilliant.
She was great. And Pretty Woman, Pretty Woman, the musical, but it was an amazing film that cried out to be a musical. Rick represented Gary Marshall.
Oh, Gary Marshall.
Gary,
my
long
man.
time.
I represented Gary.
Hello, Kevin. I'm going to talk to you now about how we're going to do this.
We're having a
And
party.
Rick was very much part of that evolution, me producing that with his client, Gary Marshall.
There's a rumor I heard, because I'm friends with Maria Cooper, Gary Cooper's daughter. And tell me if it's true. You can just confirm it or deny. We don't have to get into it, but I hear you are thinking about, or maybe further than thinking about, High Noon.
More than thinking. We are doing High Noon for Broadway.
Wow.
Next year. And
No one cast yet?
well, we are.
All right, stay tuned, folks. We'll have to have
Stay
Paula back
tuned.
when that happens.
But it is the playwriting debut of an extraordinary screenwriter, Eric Roth.
Oh, I
who
think we've heard of
wrote
him.
The play.
Eric Roth, guys, Forrest Gump, need I say more, and a million other things.
He wrote the play, and we're coming to Broadway. And it's fascinating because when you think about it, it really was an allegory for the blacklist.
Ooh.
And if you transpose that to
that's deep.
our
You
time,
bet.
and Eric has written an extraordinary script.
Now,
So,
that's a straight
yes,
play.
That's a
Do you have any
straight play. There
musicals?
is some music in it. Not at the moment. I'm doing another one in London based on a film that Tom and I had executive produced called The Others.
Oh, my God, that
Starring
movie, Nicole,
Nicole
Yeah,
that
that'd be great.
was
Was
so
in the-
good. It's one of
was
the
in the
best
film.
horror gothic thrillers
And
I've
isn't
ever
it perfect
seen.
as a play? It's self-contained. It's in the house.
Are you involved in it, Rick, or not?
No.
We're involved with everything we do
Yeah,
with each
oh
other.
my God.
I'm his biggest champion.
Well,
and
that's so obvious.
I'm a fan of Rick Nicita's.
Well, I'm a
huge
fan of Rick
fan.
Nicita's, and I'm a fan of Paula Wagner's.
Somebody back in the old CIA days made a T-shirt, Paula Wagner Fan Club, with a big picture of Paula, which is, the thing is 30 years old, but I wear it, and I wore it last night, the T-shirt.
Guys, listen, you are Hollywood royalty, and I'm so blessed not only to have you here, but to call you friends and love that our relationship keeps unfolding.
We love you.
The
For
research
some
proves
time.
it. Highly recommend.
Thank you both so much. To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed our interview today. For more filmmaking and audience testing stories, I invite you to check out my book, Audienceology, at Amazon or through my website at kevingetz360.com. You can also follow me on my social media. Next time on Don't Kill the Messenger, I'll welcome Grammy Award-nominated executive Spring Aspers, president of the Sony Pictures Music Group. Until then, I'm Kevin Goetz, and to you, our listeners, I appreciate you being part of the movie-making process. Your opinions matter.